The roar of 15,000 voices echoed through the National Western Complex as Cody West adjusted his grip on the bull rope. January in Denver brought that bone-chilling cold that cut through even the thickest Carhartt jacket. But inside the arena, the air was thick with anticipation and the smell of dirt, leather, and livestock. The massive electronic scoreboard flashed his name in bold letters. Cody West, Weatherford, Texas, followed by his current standings. Third place overall. One good ride away from moving into second. Big Gun stood motionless in chute number 4, all 2,000 pounds of raw muscle and bad intentions. The massive black Brahma cross had earned his reputation over 3 seasons, bucking off 47 of his last 50 riders. His horns curved wickedly upward, and there was something in his dark eyes that seemed almost intelligent, as if he understood exactly what was about to happen. "You sure about this one, Cody?" Jake Martinez, his traveling partner and closest friend, leaned against the chute rails. Jake had been riding the circuit for 8 years, long enough to know when a bull was more than just another animal to climb aboard. Big Gun's been having himself quite the season. Sent Tommy Rodriguez to the hospital just last month. Cody worked the rosin into his glove, the white powder mixing with the sweat that had nothing to do with the arena's heat. At 24, he'd been chasing his dream for 6 years, ever since he'd graduated from Weatherford High and decided college could wait. His daddy had ridden bulls for 15 years before a Hereford named Tornado ended his career with 3 broken ribs and a punctured lung. "Son," he'd told Cody just before he'd left for his first professional event, "this sport'll either make you or break you. Sometimes both." The memory of those words felt heavy now as Cody settled onto Big Gun's broad back. The bull's muscles rippled beneath him, and he could feel the animal's breathing deep and measured. Around him, the organized chaos of a professional bull riding event continued. Cowboys stretched and prepared, sponsors checked their cameras, and announcers kept the crowd engaged with stories and statistics. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed across the arena, climbing aboard Big Gun from Weatherford, Texas, riding for a chance to move into second place overall, "Please welcome Cody West." The cheers washed over him, but Cody's world had narrowed to the few square feet of space between himself and the dirt below. His left hand was wrapped tight in the bull rope, his right arm extended for balance. The ritual was always the same. Adjust the rope, check his grip, nod to the gate man. 8 seconds, he whispered to himself. Just 8 seconds. But as the gate swung open and Big Gun exploded into the arena like a force of nature, Cody knew immediately that something was wrong. The bull's first jump was higher than anything he'd expected, launching both of them nearly 6 feet off the ground. When they landed, the impact jarred every bone in his body, but it was Big Gun's second move that changed everything. The bull spun to the right, a violent corkscrew that sent Cody's legs flying outward. He tried to adjust, tried to find his center, but Big Gun was already into his third jump, this one with a vicious kick that threw Cody forward. His hand was still wrapped in the rope, which should have been his lifeline, but now it became his anchor to disaster. Time slowed to a crawl. Cody could see the arena dirt rushing up to meet him, could hear the crowd's roar shift from excitement to concern. He tried to free his hand from the rope, but Big Gun's momentum had twisted it tight. The bull landed hard and immediately spun left, whipping Cody around like a rag doll. Then came the moment that would replay in his mind for months afterward. Big Gun stumbled just slightly, but enough to send Cody sliding down the animal's left side. Still unable to free his hand, he found himself hanging beneath nearly a ton of angry bull, his body bouncing against Big Gun's powerful legs. The bullfighters were moving, their bright shirts flashing as they tried to get close enough to help, but Big Gun was spinning too fast, too erratically. Finally, mercifully, the rope gave way and Cody hit the ground hard, landing on his left side with a sickening crack that even the crowd could hear. Big Gun, now free of his rider, gave one final kick that caught Cody squarely in the lower back before trotting toward the outgate as if nothing had happened. The arena fell silent except for the sound of running feet and urgent voices. Dr. Sarah Chun, the event's sports medicine physician, was the first to reach him, followed closely by Jake and 2 EMTs. Cody lay motionless on his side, his face pressed against the dirt that had been his world for 6 years. "Don't move," Dr. Chun commanded, her hands already checking for obvious injuries. "Can you feel your legs?" Cody tried to speak, but only managed a weak groan. The pain was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, radiating from his left shoulder down through his entire torso. He could feel his legs, which was a relief, but the agony in his shoulder and hip was overwhelming. "We need a backboard here," Dr. Chin called out. "Possible clavicle and pelvic fractures." As the medical team worked around him, Cody caught sight of the scoreboard. His name was still there, but now it showed zeros across the board. No score. No points. No advancement to second place. Just another rider who couldn't make the 8-second whistle. The crowd was on its feet, offering the polite applause that bull riders received when they were carried out on stretchers. It was respectful, sympathetic, but Cody knew what it really meant. In this sport, injury was always one ride away, and tonight it had found him. Jake knelt beside the stretcher as they prepared to move him. "Hey, partner, you're gonna be all right. This is just a setback." Cody managed to focus on his friend's face. Jake's expression was trying to be reassuring, but Cody could see the worry there, the understanding that this wasn't just another minor injury. This was the kind of wreck that changed everything. As they wheeled him toward the ambulance, Cody caught one last glimpse of the arena. The next rider was already settling onto his bull, the show going on without missing a beat. That was the nature of professional rodeo. There was always another cowboy ready to take your place, always another ride to be ridden. The ambulance ride to Denver Health Medical Center was a blur of sirens and pain medication. Dr. Chin rode along, monitoring his vitals and asking questions about his pain levels. Through the small window, Cody could see the lights of Denver passing by, the city that had been supposed to be his launching pad to greater things. In the emergency room, the harsh fluorescent lights revealed the full extent of his condition. X-rays confirmed what Dr. Chin had suspected: a completely shattered clavicle that would require surgical repair, and a fractured pelvis that had him immobilized for the immediate future. The orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Michael Torres, explained the procedures he'd need and the timeline for recovery. "The clavicle we can fix with a plate and screws," Dr. Torres said, studying the X-rays on his tablet. "But the pelvic injury is more concerning. You've got multiple fractures here that are going to take months to heal properly. Even then, there's no guarantee you'll return to your previous level of athletic performance." The words hit harder than Big Gun's hooves. Months of recovery. No guarantee of return to form. In professional bull riding, months might as well be years. The sport moved fast, and sponsors had short memories. Jake had driven straight to the hospital after the event, still wearing his riding clothes and carrying the smell of the arena with him. He pulled a chair close to Cody's bed and sat down heavily. "Talk to your folks," he said. "They're driving up from Weatherford tonight. Should be here by morning." Cody nodded, though even that small movement sent pain shooting through his shoulder. His parents had supported his dream from the beginning, even when it meant watching their son climb aboard animals that could kill him. Now they'd have to watch him face the possibility that the dream was over. "What about my sponsors?" Cody asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Let's just focus on getting you well first." But Cody knew what that silence meant. Wrangler, Resistal, and the smaller sponsors who paid for his entry fees and travel expenses. They weren't in the business of supporting injured cowboys with uncertain futures. Professional bull riding was about performance, about results, about being able to deliver when the cameras were rolling and the crowds were watching. The surgery the next morning went well, according to Dr. Torres. The titanium plate and screws would hold his clavicle together while it healed, but the real challenge was the pelvic injury. For now, he was essentially immobilized, dependent on others for even the most basic needs. His parents arrived just as he was waking up from anesthesia. His mother, Carol, tried to hide her tears as she kissed his forehead. His father, Bill, stood at the foot of the bed with his hat in his hands, his weathered face showing every emotion he was trying to keep inside. "How you feeling, son?" Bill asked. "Like I got stepped on by a bull." Cody attempted a joke, but it came out flat. Carol squeezed his uninjured hand. "The doctors say you're going to make a full recovery." "Full recovery for normal people," Cody corrected. "Might be different for someone who needs to ride bulls for a living." The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Jake entered, followed by a young woman in a business suit whom Cody didn't recognize. "Cody, this is Amanda Richardson from Resistal," Jake said, his expression grim. Amanda approached the bed with the practiced sympathy of someone who'd delivered this kind of news before. "Cody, I want you to know how sorry we are about your accident. The entire Resistal family is pulling for your recovery." The but was coming. Cody could feel it. "However," Amanda continued, "given the uncertain timeline for your return to competition, we've made the difficult decision to redirect our sponsorship dollars for the remainder of the season." We hope you understand that this is purely a business decision. There it was. His first sponsor, gone before he'd even left the hospital. Resistal had been paying him $15,000 a year plus bonuses for wins and television appearances. It wasn't a fortune, but in the world of professional bull riding, it was enough to keep him on the road and entered in the bigger events. After Amanda left, the room fell silent. His parents exchanged worried glances, and Jake stared out the window at the Denver skyline. "It's okay," Cody said finally. "I expected it. But it wasn't okay." Over the next 3 days, while he remained in the hospital, the other calls came. Wrangler. Justin Boots. The smaller sponsors who'd seen him as an up-and-coming star worth investing in. One by one, they expressed their sympathy and their business decisions. By the time he was discharged to a rehabilitation facility, Cody West was no longer a sponsored athlete. He was just another broken cowboy with uncertain prospects and mounting medical bills. The rodeo world had moved on without him, as it always did. Dr. Torres's final words before discharge were both encouraging and sobering. "Your bones will heal, Cody. The question is whether you'll be willing to put them at risk again." As Jake helped him into the passenger seat of his pickup truck for the long drive back to Texas, Cody took one last look at the Denver skyline. Somewhere in this city, the National Western Stock Show was continuing. Cowboys were climbing onto bulls, chasing the same dreams he'd been chasing just a week ago. But for Cody West, Denver had become the place where those dreams had died. If this story has already moved you, subscribe to the channel and leave your like so you don't miss any of our stories. The drive from Denver to Weatherford took 14 hours, but for Cody, strapped into the passenger seat with his left arm in a sling and his pelvis supported by a special cushion, it felt like a journey to another planet. Jake had offered to fly him home, but Cody insisted on the truck. He needed time to think, and somehow the familiar rhythm of highway miles seemed like the right backdrop for processing what had just happened to his life. They drove mostly in silence, stopping every 2 hours so Cody could stretch and take his pain medication. The winter landscape of Colorado gave way to the vast plains of Kansas, then the rolling hills of Oklahoma, and finally the familiar territory of North Texas. Each mile took him further from the life he'd known and closer to an uncertain future. Jake pulled into the driveway of the small ranch house where Cody had grown up just as the sun was setting. The house sat on 15 acres of rolling pasture, with a weathered barn and a few outbuildings that had seen better days. It was home, but returning under these circumstances felt like defeat. Bill and Carol were waiting on the porch, their faces etched with the kind of worry that only parents of injured children know. They'd driven straight home from Denver to prepare the house for his recovery, converting the downstairs study into a bedroom since he couldn't manage stairs yet. "Welcome home, son," Bill said, helping Jake ease Cody out of the truck. The next few weeks passed in a haze of physical therapy appointments, doctor visits, and the kind of boredom that comes from being unable to do the things that had defined your entire adult life. Dr. Martinez, his local orthopedist, was cautiously optimistic about his progress, but emphasized that healing couldn't be rushed. "Your clavicle is knitting well," he said during a follow-up appointment in February. "The plate is holding everything in place nicely. But the pelvic injury is more complex. We're looking at another 8 to 10 weeks before you can put full weight on that side, and even then, we'll need to see how your range of motion recovers." Cody nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. 8 to 10 more weeks meant he'd miss the entire spring season. The Professional Bull Riders Tour was already moving into its busiest period, and every event he missed was another opportunity for younger riders to establish themselves. The financial reality was becoming clearer each day. Without sponsor money, his savings were disappearing rapidly. Medical insurance covered most of the hospital bills, but not the ongoing physical therapy or the specialized equipment he needed for recovery. His parents had offered to help, but the ranch barely supported them as it was. It was during one of those long February afternoons, while he was doing prescribed exercises with resistance bands in the makeshift bedroom, that the call came. The number on his phone showed a Wyoming area code. Cody West. The voice was gravelly, with the distinctive accent of someone who'd spent their life around livestock. "Yes, sir. This is Tom Morrison. I run the Silver Creek Ranch up in Casper. Heard about your accident, and I wanted to talk to you about an opportunity." Cody sat up straighter, wincing at the pain in his hip. Tom Morrison was a legend in the ranching world, running one of the largest cattle operations in Wyoming. More importantly, he was known for his involvement in training young bull riders. "I'm listening, Mr. Morrison." Well, I'll cut right to it. I've been watching your career for the last couple years. You've got natural talent and work ethic, but more than that, you understand cattle. That's rarer than you might think in today's bull riding world. Tom paused, and Cody could hear wind blowing in the background. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, Tom continued. Your riding career might be over, at least at the professional level. But I think you might have a future in training riders and working with bucking stock. The question is whether you'd be interested in learning a different side of the business. The offer was intriguing, but also felt like accepting defeat. Training others meant admitting he couldn't compete anymore himself. What exactly would that involve? Cody asked. Come up to Wyoming when you're cleared to travel. Spend some time with us. Learn how we select and develop bucking stock, how we train young riders, how the business really works. It's not glamorous like competition, but it's honest work, and there's a future in it for someone willing to learn. After Tom hung up, Cody stared at the phone for a long time. It was the first real opportunity anyone had offered him since the accident, but it felt like admitting his riding career was over before he'd even tried to come back. March brought warmer weather and better mobility. Cody was walking without assistance now, though his left hip still ached in cold weather, and his shoulder had a limited range of motion that physical therapy was slowly improving. Dr. Martinez cleared him for light activity, which meant he could finally leave the house for more than medical appointments. His first stop was Mesquite, where Jake was competing in a smaller regional event. Walking into the arena for the first time since Denver was both familiar and foreign. The smells, the sounds, the controlled chaos backstage. It all brought back powerful memories, but now he was an observer rather than a participant. Cody! Several riders called out his name as he made his way through the staging area. The greetings were warm, but carried an undercurrent of awkwardness. Everyone knew what had happened, and everyone was unsure how to act around him. Marcus Thompson, a young rider from Oklahoma who'd been having a good season, approached him with genuine enthusiasm. Man, it's good to see you up and around. When are you thinking about getting back on? It was the question everyone wanted to ask, but most were too polite to voice. Cody had prepared for it, but actually hearing it still stung. Still working on getting my strength back, he replied diplomatically. Taking it one day at a time. He watched the evening's competition from the stands, studying the riders with a different perspective than he'd had as a competitor. Marcus had a solid technique, but was too aggressive with his free arm. Jeremy Walsh from Montana had excellent balance, but wasn't reading his bulls well enough to anticipate their moves. Most troubling was watching the young riders, some barely 18, making the same mistakes he'd made early in his career. They were talented athletes, but they lacked the subtle understanding of livestock behavior that separated good riders from great ones. During the intermission, Jake found him in the stands. So what do you think? I think these kids could use some coaching, Cody replied. Half of them are fighting their bulls instead of riding them. Jake nodded toward the chutes where several riders were preparing for the final round. Marcus was asking about you earlier. He's struggling with left-spinning bulls, can't seem to find his timing. Without thinking, Cody found himself analyzing Marcus's problem. He's sitting too far forward and putting too much weight on his rope hand. When the bull spins left, it throws him off balance because he can't adjust his center of gravity quick enough. You should tell him that. I'm not a coach, Jake. I'm a rider. But even as he said it, Cody wasn't sure it was true anymore. The drive home from Mesquite was quiet, both men lost in their own thoughts. Jake finally broke the silence as they turned onto the ranch road. That Morrison guy called me, he said. Wanted to know if I thought you'd be interested in his offer. What did you tell him? That you were still figuring things out. But Cody, maybe it's worth considering. You've got knowledge that could help a lot of young riders. That night, lying in bed and listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch, Cody found himself thinking about Tom Morrison's offer. Learning the business side of rodeo, working with bucking stock, training young riders. It wasn't the career he'd planned, but it was still connected to the world he loved. The next morning brought another reminder of his financial reality. The insurance company needed additional documentation for his ongoing physical therapy claims, and his truck payment was overdue. The small amount of prize money he'd earned before the accident was long gone, and his parents were already stretching their budget to support him. Carol found him at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of bills and medical statements. Honey, your father and I have been talking. Maybe it's time to consider that job offer from Wyoming. It's not a job offer, Mom. It's more like an apprenticeship. And it would mean admitting my riding career is over. She sat down across from him and reached for his hand. Sometimes life takes us in directions we didn't plan. Your father's riding career ended with an injury too, but that led him to focus on the ranch, which led to meeting me, which led to you. That's different. Dad was already established when he got hurt. I was just getting started. Were you? She asked gently. Cody, you'd been riding professionally for 6 years. You'd made it to the big shows, earned some good money, proved you belonged. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it's time for the next chapter. Her words stayed with him as he spent the afternoon working with the cattle in the small pasture behind the barn. The physical activity felt good, even though his movement was still limited. More importantly, watching the cattle and understanding their behavior reminded him of skills that went beyond bull riding. That evening, he called Tom Morrison. I've been thinking about your offer, Cody said without preamble. And when would you want me to come up? Tom's chuckle carried clearly over the phone. How about next week? If you're physically up for it, we're starting to work with our young stock, getting them ready for the season. Good time to learn how we evaluate bucking potential. After hanging up, Cody sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the pasture where he'd first learned to ride bulls as a teenager. His father had built a practice pen out there, with an old tire suspended from the barn for balance training. It seemed like another lifetime. Bill joined him on the porch, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Your mother told me you're thinking about going to Wyoming. Yeah, still not sure it's the right move. Son, I learned something when my riding career ended. The sport doesn't owe us anything. We choose to climb on those bulls, knowing the risks. When it's over, whether by choice or by circumstance, what matters is how we use what we learned. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, father and son, both former bull riders whose careers had ended with injuries. Finally, Bill spoke again. That Morrison fellow has a good reputation. If he's offering to teach you the business, that's an opportunity worth taking. The rodeo world needs people who understand both sides, competition and production. A week later, Jake helped Cody pack his truck for the drive to Wyoming. It felt strange loading his belongings for what might be a permanent move, leaving behind the only home he'd ever known. You sure about this? Jake asked as they loaded the last box. No, Cody replied honestly. But I'm sure I can't keep sitting around here feeling sorry for myself. The drive to Casper took 8 hours, giving Cody plenty of time to think about what lay ahead. He was trading the familiar for the unknown, competition for education, dreams of glory for the reality of starting over. As he crossed the Wyoming state line, Cody realized that for the first time since the accident, he wasn't thinking about what he'd lost. Instead, he was wondering what he might find. The Silver Creek Ranch sprawled across 40,000 acres of Wyoming grassland, with the Medicine Bow Mountains providing a dramatic backdrop to the west. Tom Morrison met Cody at the main gate in a dust-covered pickup that had seen decades of hard use, its bed loaded with feed sacks and ranch equipment. Welcome to Wyoming, Tom said, extending a weathered hand that bore the calluses of a lifetime spent working cattle. At 62, he moved with the careful efficiency of someone who'd learned to conserve energy for the tasks that mattered most. His gray hair was hidden beneath a sweat-stained hat, and his blue eyes held the kind of directness that came from years of making quick decisions about livestock and weather. The drive to the ranch house took 20 minutes, following gravel roads that wound between pastures filled with Black Angus cattle and quarter horses. Cody counted 3 separate sets of working pens, a massive hay barn, and several outbuildings before they reached the main compound. We run about 3,000 head of mother cows, Tom explained as they parked near a modest ranch house surrounded by mature cottonwoods. But the bucking stock operation is what you're here to learn about. We've got 47 head of bucking bulls right now, plus about 60 horses for the saddle bronc program. The bunkhouse where Cody would be staying was a low, practical building that housed 4 other ranch employees. His room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out toward the bull pastures. It was a far cry from the hotel rooms he'd grown accustomed to during his competition days, but it felt honest in a way that those places never had. Maria Santos, the ranch cook, had dinner ready when Tom brought Cody to the main house. She was a compact woman in her 50s whose family had worked on the ranch for 3 generations. Her food was simple but substantial: beef stew, cornbread, and vegetables from the ranch garden. Maria keeps us all fed and healthy, Tom said. Her grandfather helped my dad start this operation back in the 60s. After dinner, Tom led Cody to his office, a cluttered room lined with rodeo photographs, championship buckles, and breeding charts. A massive desk dominated the center of the room, covered with paperwork and livestock magazines. "Before we start working with animals tomorrow, you need to understand the business," Tom began, settling into his chair. "Bucking stock isn't just about finding mean bulls. It's about genetics, temperament, athletic ability, and showmanship. A great bucking bull can earn more in a year than most ranch hands make in 5. He pulled out a thick binder filled with pedigree charts and performance records. "This is Big Gun, the bull that put you in the hospital. We bred him here 6 years ago. His daddy was Tornado, one of the greatest bucking bulls of all time. His mother was a daughter of Red Rock, another legend. Seeing Big Gun's breeding information was surreal. The bull that had ended his competitive career had a documented lineage going back 4 generations, with detailed records of his offspring and their bucking performance. Big Gun's earned over $200,000 in stud fees alone," Tom continued. "His sons are already showing promise in junior competitions. That's the business side most people never see." The next morning began at 5:30 with coffee and a quick breakfast before heading to the bull pastures. Tom's foreman, Ray Hutchinson, was already at the working pens when they arrived. Ray was a third-generation bucking stock contractor who'd grown up around professional rodeo. "Morning, Cody," Ray said, offering his hand. "Heard you had some bad luck in Denver." "That's a tough break, but Tom's right about you having potential in this business." The morning's task was evaluating young bulls, 18-month-old animals that were just beginning to show their potential as bucking stock. Tom and Ray moved through the herd with practiced eyes, discussing conformation, temperament, and bloodlines. "This red bull here," Tom pointed to a muscular Brahma cross, "has the right build and attitude, but watch how he moves. See that slight favor of his left front leg? Might develop into a soundness problem later." Cody found himself drawn into the evaluation process, asking questions about what to look for and how to predict future performance. His background as a rider gave him insights into bull behavior that most ranch hands lacked. "The bulls you rode taught you something about their psychology," Ray observed. "Most people see a bucking bull as just a big, mean animal. But each one has individual characteristics, preferences, patterns of behavior." As the weeks passed, Cody's education expanded beyond livestock evaluation. He learned about the contractual relationships between stock contractors and rodeo committees, the logistics of moving animals to competitions, and the financial realities of maintaining a quality program. More importantly, he began working with young riders who came to the ranch for training. Tom had a reputation for developing talent, and aspiring bull riders traveled from across the region to learn from him. Marcus Thompson was among the first to arrive for spring training camp. The young Oklahoma rider had struggled through the early season, failing to make qualified rides in his last 4 competitions. "I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong," Marcus confided to Cody one evening after a particularly frustrating practice session. "I feel like I'm fighting every bull instead of riding them." Cody recognized the problem immediately. It was the same issue he'd noticed at the Mesquite competition, and it was something he'd struggled with himself early in his career. "You're trying too hard," Cody explained as they watched video of Marcus's recent rides. "Look here, you're gripping the rope so tight that you can't adjust when the bull changes direction. Your whole upper body is locked up." They spent the next morning working on Marcus's grip and body position. Cody had never formally coached anyone before, but he found that explaining techniques to others helped him understand his own riding in new ways. "Think of it like dancing with a partner who's trying to throw you off," Cody said as Marcus prepared for another practice ride. "You have to be strong enough to stay connected, but flexible enough to move with them." The breakthrough came on a practice bull named Cisco, a reliable animal that spun consistently to the left. Marcus had been thrown by left-spinning bulls in 3 consecutive competitions, developing a mental block about them. "Trust your instincts," Cody called out as Marcus settled onto Cisco's back. "Feel which way he wants to go and let your body adjust naturally." This time, Marcus made the full 8 seconds, staying centered and balanced throughout Cisco's spin cycle. When he dismounted, his face was bright with understanding. "I felt it," he said excitedly. "I could feel him telegraphing his moves before he made them." Word of Marcus's improvement spread quickly through the small community of bull riders. Soon, other young riders were asking Tom about training opportunities at Silver Creek. By May, the ranch was hosting informal coaching sessions twice a week. Cody found himself becoming the primary instructor for these sessions, with Tom and Ray providing oversight and guidance. Teaching forced him to articulate techniques and strategies he'd always understood intuitively, and he discovered he had a natural ability to identify and correct the specific problems individual riders faced. "You've got a gift for this," Tom told him one evening as they watched video of that day's training sessions. "These kids are improving faster than I've seen in years." The comment meant more to Cody than Tom probably realized. For the first time since his accident, he felt like he was contributing something valuable to the sport he loved. But the real test of his new role came in June, when the ranch hosted a regional competition featuring some of the bulls they'd been developing. Several of Cody's students were entered, including Marcus, who had earned enough points during the spring to qualify for some larger events. The competition was held in Silver Creek's own arena, a professional quality facility that Tom had built specifically for testing young stock. About 500 spectators filled the modest grandstands, including several scouts from major rodeo committees. Marcus drew Thunder Road, a 4-year-old bull that had never been ridden in 6 previous outings. It was exactly the kind of challenge that had been defeating him all season, a powerful, athletic animal with an unpredictable bucking pattern. "Remember what we worked on," Cody said as Marcus prepared for his ride. "Feel his rhythm, don't fight it." Thunder Road exploded from the chute with a series of high, spinning jumps that would have unsettled Marcus just a few months earlier. But this time, the young rider stayed centered, his free arm working for balance while his rope hand maintained just enough tension to keep him connected. 8 seconds felt like 8 minutes, but when the whistle blew, Marcus was still aboard. The crowd erupted, not just because it was a good ride, but because everyone there understood they'd witnessed something special: the successful completion of a young rider's development. After the competition, several stock contractors approached Tom about sending riders to Silver Creek for training. A representative from a major corporate sponsor asked about developing a formal coaching program that could be marketed to aspiring professionals. "You've created something here," the sponsor representative told Cody. "There's a real market for quality instruction in this sport." That night, as the last of the competitors loaded their gear and headed home, Cody sat with Tom on the ranch house porch. The Wyoming sky was vast and clear, filled with more stars than he'd ever noticed during his years of traveling to competitions. "I've been thinking about your situation," Tom said, breaking a comfortable silence. "Ray's been talking about slowing down, maybe taking more of a supervisory role. If you're interested, I'd like you to consider taking over the day-to-day management of our bucking stock program." The offer was unexpected but felt right in a way that Cody couldn't fully explain. Managing Silver Creek's bucking stock program would mean responsibility for animals, breeding decisions, competition schedules, and the financial aspects of the operation. It would also mean staying in Wyoming, putting down roots for the first time since he'd left home to chase his rodeo dreams. "What about the coaching program?" Cody asked. "That would be part of it. We could formalize what you've been doing, maybe develop it into something bigger. There's clearly a need for quality instruction, and you've proven you can deliver results." Cody thought about Marcus's ride earlier that day, about the other young riders who'd shown improvement under his guidance, about the satisfaction he'd found in teaching others to succeed where he'd been forced to step back. "I'd like to think about it," he said. "Take your time. But Cody, I want you to know that what you're doing here matters. These young riders are learning more than just technique from you. They're learning how to handle adversity, how to come back from setbacks. That's something you can only teach if you've lived it." As Tom headed inside, Cody remained on the porch, thinking about the unexpected direction his life had taken. 6 months ago, he'd been a rising star in professional bull riding, focused solely on his own success and climbing the rankings. The accident had ended that chapter of his life, but it had also opened doors he'd never considered. Teaching Marcus and the others had given him a different kind of satisfaction than he'd ever found in competition. Helping them solve problems, watching them improve, seeing their confidence grow. It felt like contributing to something larger than his individual success. His phone buzzed with a text message from Jake, who was competing in Colorado that weekend. "Saw the video of Marcus's ride. Heard you're the one who coached him through it. Proud of you, partner." For the first time since Denver, Cody felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. August brought the kind of heat that made Wyoming's high plains shimmer like water, but also the excitement of preparing for the ranch's first formal training camp. Word had spread through the professional bull riding community about the success of Silver Creek's coaching program, and applications had come from riders across the western United States. Cody stood in the newly expanded training facility, watching contractors install additional video equipment and safety padding. Tom had invested heavily in upgrading the operation, adding a climate-controlled classroom for video analysis and theory sessions, plus improved medical facilities staffed by Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a sports medicine physician who specialized in rodeo injuries. Nervous? Tom asked, joining him at the arena fence. A little, Cody admitted. It's one thing to help a few riders improve their technique. Running a formal program with paying students is different. The first session would host 12 riders for a week-long intensive camp. Among them were 2 previous world champions looking to fine-tune their techniques, several up-and-coming professionals, and 3 college students considering careers in professional rodeo. Marcus Thompson had volunteered to stay for the session as a demonstration rider and assistant instructor. His season had turned around dramatically since his time at Silver Creek, and he'd recently signed his first major sponsorship deal with a boot company. You know what changed everything for me? Marcus said as they prepared the practice bulls for the afternoon session. It wasn't just the technical stuff, though that was important. It was realizing that getting hurt didn't have to mean giving up on the sport entirely. Marcus's comment reflected something Cody had been thinking about increasingly. His own accident had initially felt like a complete ending, but working at Silver Creek had shown him that there were many ways to be involved in professional rodeo beyond competition. The first morning of camp began with medical screenings by Dr. Walsh, followed by individual interviews where Cody and his assistants evaluated each rider's current skill level and specific goals. The process reminded him of his own early days in professional competition, when everything had seemed impossibly complex and overwhelming. Tyler Jensen, a 19-year-old from Montana, was typical of the younger riders. He had natural athletic ability and no fear, but lacked the subtle understanding of bull behavior that separated successful riders from those who merely survived their 8-second attempts. I can stay on most bulls, Tyler explained during his interview, but I can't seem to score high enough to win anything. The judges always mark me down for control and technique. Cody nodded, recognizing a problem he'd faced himself early in his career. Show me your grip, he said, handing Tyler a practice rope. Tyler's grip was functional but inefficient, requiring too much strength to maintain control and preventing the fluid movement that judges looked for in scoring rides. We'll work on that, Cody said. But first, I want you to understand something about these animals. Every bull has preferences, patterns, tells that indicate what they're about to do. Learning to read those signs is what separates good riders from great ones. The week's curriculum included morning video sessions, analyzing footage of legendary rides, and discussing strategy, followed by practical sessions with practice bulls. Afternoons were devoted to physical conditioning and injury prevention, with Dr. Walsh teaching proper warm-up techniques and muscle activation exercises. But the real breakthroughs came during the individual coaching sessions, when Cody worked one-on-one with riders to address their specific challenges. Sarah Mitchell, one of the few female riders in camp, had been struggling with confidence issues after a series of injuries. Women's professional bull riding was growing in popularity, but the smaller rider pool meant that a few bad performances could derail an entire season. I know I have the skills, Sarah said during one of their sessions. But every time I climb on, I'm thinking about getting hurt instead of making the ride. Cody understood her struggle intimately. After his own accident, the fear of re-injury had been as debilitating as his physical limitations. Fear isn't the enemy, he told her as they watched video of her recent rides. Fear keeps us alive in this sport. The problem is when fear starts making decisions for us. They worked on mental preparation techniques, including visualization exercises and breathing methods that helped manage anxiety. More importantly, Cody shared his own experience of overcoming the psychological aftermath of serious injury. The accident taught me that I wasn't invincible, he said. But it also taught me that I was tougher than I thought. Sometimes that knowledge is more valuable than thinking you'll never get hurt. By the end of the week, every rider in the camp had shown measurable improvement. Tyler's scoring average had increased by 12 points through improved technique and bull reading skills. Sarah had successfully completed rides on 3 different bulls, regaining the confidence that had been shaken by her injuries. The success of the first camp led to immediate booking requests for fall sessions. Major sponsors began inquiring about partnership opportunities, and the Professional Bull Riders Organization asked about developing a formal curriculum that could be used at other training facilities. But the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Big Gun, the bull that had ended Cody's competitive career, was being retired from competition due to age and would be returning to Silver Creek for his final years as a breeding animal. "Thought you might want to see this," Tom said, showing Cody the transport schedule. "He'll be arriving next week." The prospect of seeing Big Gun again brought up complicated emotions. The bull had been responsible for the most devastating moment of his life, but also for setting him on the path that had led to his current fulfillment. When the transport truck arrived, Cody was waiting at the unloading chute. Big Gun stepped down slowly, his massive frame showing the wear of 6 years of professional competition. He was still an impressive animal, but there was a calmness about him that hadn't been there during his competitive days. "Hello, old friend," Cody said quietly as the bull was led to his retirement pasture. Ray Hutchinson joined him at the fence. "Funny how things work out sometimes. If that bull hadn't put you in the hospital, you might never have discovered your talent for teaching." It was true, though Cody had never thought about it quite that way. His accident had forced him to find new meaning in the sport he loved, and that search had led to a career he found more satisfying than competition had ever been. The fall training camps were even more successful than the summer session. Word of Silver Creek's program had spread internationally, attracting riders from Canada, Australia, and Brazil. Cody found himself working with athletes whose techniques had been shaped by different cultural approaches to bull riding. Miguel Santos, a young Brazilian rider, brought a style influenced by his country's tradition of working cattle in dense forests. His technique was unorthodox but effective, and studying his approach helped Cody develop new teaching methods that benefited riders from more traditional American backgrounds. "Each culture brings something different to this sport," Tom observed as they watched Miguel demonstrate his unique riding position. "That's what keeps it evolving." By November, Silver Creek's training program had become so successful that Tom offered to make Cody a full partner in the operation. The proposal included ownership stakes in both the bucking stock program and the training business, along with a guaranteed annual income that exceeded what he'd ever earned as a competitor. "I want you to think carefully about this," Tom said as they reviewed the partnership documents. "This is a chance to build something that could last for decades, something you could eventually pass on to the next generation." That evening, Cody called his parents to discuss the opportunity. His father's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "Son, you found your calling," Bill said. "I can hear it in your voice when you talk about those young riders. That's something money can't buy." His mother was more cautious, concerned about the financial commitments involved in business ownership. But she also recognized the change in her son since he'd moved to Wyoming. "You sound like yourself again," Carol said. "Not the person you were trying to become for the cameras and sponsors, but the person you actually are." The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Jake had driven up from Colorado, where he'd been competing in the final events of the season. "Heard you're thinking about becoming a businessman," Jake said with a grin as they walked through the bull pastures. "Still trying to figure it out," Cody replied. "It's a big decision. Can I tell you something? Watching what you've built here, seeing how those kids respond to your teaching, this is what you were meant to do. Competition was just preparing you for this." They stopped at Big Gun's pasture, where the retired bull was grazing peacefully among the other breeding animals. The sight of him no longer brought pain or resentment, just a kind of respectful acknowledgement of how dramatically one 8-second ride had changed everything. "You know what I realized?" Cody said. "I spent 6 years trying to prove I was good enough to ride bulls professionally. But I never asked myself what I wanted to do with that knowledge once I proved it." Jake nodded. "And now you know." "Yeah. I want to help other people discover what they're capable of. I want to be part of developing the next generation of riders, helping them avoid the mistakes I made, teaching them that there's life in this sport beyond just competition." That afternoon, Cody signed the partnership agreement with Tom. Silver Creek Ranch would become Silver Creek Training and Bucking Stock, with Cody serving as head of rider development and co-owner of the breeding program. The announcement was made at a small celebration that evening, attended by ranch employees, several of Cody's former students, and Dr. Walsh, who had become the program's permanent medical director. Marcus Thompson drove up from Oklahoma specifically for the event, bringing news that he'd qualified for the National Finals Rodeo for the first time in his career. "None of this would have happened without what you taught me here," Marcus said during his informal remarks. "You showed me that setbacks don't have to be endings. They can be beginnings if you're willing to learn from them." As the celebration wound down and guests began heading home, Cody found himself alone in the arena where so much of his new life had taken shape. The facility was quiet now, But in a few months it would again be filled with young riders working to improve their skills and chase their dreams. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Heard about your program through PBR. My son is 16 and wants to start riding bulls professionally. Would like to discuss training options for next summer. It was the kind of message he received several times a week now, parents and young riders looking for guidance in navigating the complex world of professional rodeo. Each inquiry represented another opportunity to share what he'd learned, another chance to help someone avoid the mistakes that could derail a promising career. Standing there in the quiet arena, Cody thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. The accident in Denver had felt like the end of his story, but it had actually been the beginning of a new chapter that was proving more fulfilling than anything he'd imagined during his competitive days. He pulled out his phone and responded to the text. We'd be happy to discuss your son's goals and how our program might help him achieve them safely. Let's schedule a call to talk about his current experience level and what he hopes to accomplish. After sending the message, Cody walked to the arena fence and looked out at the bull pastures where Big Gun and the other retired champions spent their days. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities to contribute to the sport that had given him so much. The boy who had once dreamed of 8-second rides and championship buckles had become a man who found his greatest satisfaction in helping others achieve their dreams. It wasn't the story he'd planned to write, but it was the story he was meant to live. As he headed back to the ranch house, Cody smiled at the thought of the young rider who would soon be arriving for training, full of ambition and determination, just as he had been years ago. The cycle would continue, and he would be there to help guide it, 1 8-second ride at a time. If this story has already moved you, subscribe to the channel and leave your like so you don't miss any of our stories.